With so much uncertainty about Putin's next move and what's happening across these countries, let's bring back tonight retired Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis, senior fellow and military expert for defense priorities. Colonel, who do you think blew up the daughter of Putin's ally? Because Ukraine says, not us, no way, we didn't do it.
Yeah, well, and of course, Russia is saying absolutely they did. In fact, Russia has released like a detailed timeline of who they exactly said did it, how they came, etc. And Ukraine is just as vehement in their denials. The fact is, no one knows, and probably no one's going to know for a long time who actually did it. But Ukraine is going to claim absolutely they didn't, and the Russians will claim absolutely they did, and both sides can be counted on to use that as something to their benefit in the information warfare, really.
Any hunch on who has the most to gain from either this man or his daughter mistakenly being killed?
Yeah, you know, honestly, I mean, just looking at it from a cold calculation perspective, probably Russia does, because this is something that is just outrageous to most Russians, and they're regarding the Ukrainian state as a terrorist organization, and they've come in and assassinated this woman that many of the Russians liked, and especially among the rightists and the nationalists in Russia, her and her father were big figures, and they're the most upset about this. And some of them are actually saying, hey, we need to forget about just the special military operations. We need to go all the way and take Kiev and get this regime out. So we'll see how that plays out, but that's the fires that have been lit right now.
That's fascinating. Could have been a sacrificial lamb. Would either side, switching to another, hinge point here, be reckless enough to blow up or seriously damage the nuclear power plant in Ukraine that everyone's watching?
Well, I got to tell you, Chance, that really worries me because, again, like so many things here, it's difficult to determine exactly who's doing what, because there's some evidence that could indicate either side, and maybe even both, are using artillery and mortars and whatnot in this area and trying to blame it on the other. But if anything happens, regardless of who it is, that could be one of the biggest problematic developments since the war started. And here's the reason why, because if you look at some of the prevailing winds and the weather patterns, if something bad happened there, this could take things over into NATO territory, NATO country. And then now you have some real questions about what to do about Article 5, and does this constitute an attack, etc. And you can see how this could quickly spiral out of control.
I had not thought of that. That's a very good point. Donbas, eastern Ukraine. It is not going as planned for Russia. It was difficult, then they accelerated. Now, as the New York Times' Helene Cooper pointed out, she said Russia's measuring its progress in feet, not in miles. It wanted to go a lot faster. Are we in a stalemate at this point, Colonel?
No, we're really not. And I take a little bit of issue with that characterization, because it's continuing to go on forth. Now, they have definitely slowed down since I think it was July 2nd when they took Lysychansk, and they took a bit of a pause and then started back. But as of this morning, Russian forces are either in or near the outskirts of Seversk, Solidar, and Bakhmut, which is the next line of defense, which is where the Ukrainians went after they were driven out of Lysychansk. And if Russia continues on to move that, then the next targets are the last major cities in the Donetsk area, in the Donbas area, which is Slavyansk and Kramatorsk, and they're going to be wide open. So if Russia continues to go in its path, those cities could fall as well. So it's slower, but it's still methodical and relentless.
Okay. 6 months in, we know exactly where Zelensky is. He's in Vogue magazine. He's a very public man. Putin has kind of withdrawn a bit. He's been kind of quiet, which makes people nervous when Vladimir Putin is quiet. What do you think he's up to? What do you expect his next move to be?
Well, I think that he is, busy with his generals and not wanting to make any boisterous statements. And I'm very confident that he wants to have a lot more progress in the Donbass, just like you mentioned there. I'm sure he's not satisfied with that progress. However relentless it may be, it's still very slow. And the longer it takes him, the more it costs him to get those. So I think that he's more focused on getting the Donbass area taken care of, because then if he can knock that out, now that he has the possibility to either turn north to Kharkiv or south to Odessa, and then potentially expand the war from there. And if he can't take the Donbass, especially, as we get into the fall, then we do get into the potential for a stalemate. Although, and I do have to point this out, the longer we get into the fall, the more we have problems with energy, with the economies of Europe starting to have, a lot of trouble. And now then we even have drought conditions that are also putting more pressure on the economies of Western Europe, and everything that causes problems for the Western economies, many of which are driven by the sanctions on Russia and their energy. There's going to be a lot more pressure, I think, in the fall and winter on the Western European countries, on their governments, to maybe bring this to a close. And that's not good for Ukraine, especially Zelensky.
Retired Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis, as always, sir, thank you.
Thank you, James.